Hey, everyone. History, science, literature, TED Talks, the pooling of knowledge from one generation to the next, from one person to another. Without language, this incredible device that we have, the human brain, none of it would be possible. And here's the device. When you're born, it's like a smartphone with no apps yet. Powerful, but without much data. Then your environment gives you a code, a language, and you plug it into your device. So you sing, you tell jokes, you lament, you philosophize. In Japan, you do it in Japanese. In Brazil, you do it in Portuguese. And if you can understand what I'm saying right now, then that means that your brain has adapted to the code English. And that means that your language acquisition device, your brain, is working perfectly. And guess what? You can also learn a second language, regardless of your age or your station in life. And to do so, all you need to do is to add the app, add the skill to your device. So, let's find out who's in the audience. Who here is a polyglot, someone who speaks 3 or more languages? Wow, that's great. You're joined by 17% of the world's population. And now how about bilinguals, who are able to speak 2 languages? That's another 43% of the world's population. All taken together, as it turns out, to be bilingual is more the norm than the exception, because 60% of the world's population is in fact bilingual. Although unfortunately, here in our nation of immigrants, we lag a little bit behind the global average. But why is that? Our brains are designed to do it, and we have resources right here in a population that is diverse and multilingual. Why aren't more of us bilingual? Well, maybe you currently study another language, but still have a way to go before you call yourself bilingual. Perfect, keep it up. And maybe some have tried a language in the past, but have given up in frustration. Or some others may have really never had an opportunity to get exposed to another language in their environment. Maybe some never really saw the point. I get it. Most people at some point have been in a language class. Does your language class look anything like the image portrayed in this picture? Look at the stress on the student's face as he offers his hand. And there's the teacher with his stick in his hand, ready to punish the student. And look at the young student behind with his hand on his head thinking, oh man, I'm next, right? Now, fortunately, nowadays, our language classes are not that draconian anymore. This is from the 18th century. But the memorization, the grids, the lists, the rules, none of it leads to language skill, because that's not actually how our brains learn language. And so it's frustrating to everyone. If you haven't learned a language in a language class, that's okay, because very few people can actually learn that way. We don't learn through error correction or worksheets. We learn through communication, just like we do when we're children. And world language classrooms have improved, but still without fail. When I'm waiting in the line at the supermarket to check out or at a party talking to people, and they find out what I do, they say, oh, you're a Spanish teacher? Wow. I studied Spanish for 5 years, and I can't say much more than ¿qué hora es? Or ¿cómo estás? And what they say is, sadly, I'm just not good at this. I'm just not good at learning languages. But nonsense, because we know you speak English perfectly. So what happened? There are a lot of good reasons to learn a second language. A second language will increase your job prospects. It'll increase your social life. It'll even increase your available gene pool. It'll make you more empathetic, and it'll make you more likely to travel. And you can sprinkle your vocabulary with little bits of things. Workout that actually strengthens your brain, much like lifting weights. Your brain has to hold all of that information and balance it. And instead of impeding your ability to think and reason, it actually accentuates it. And the result is increased gray matter, better mental flexibility, improved concentration, and you retain information better. And the benefits of being bilingual translate to higher scores on all kinds of tests for young people. And for older people, it means a later onset of such things as dementia and Alzheimer's, up to 5 years in some studies, as compared to our monolingual peers. And the most interesting thing, I think, comes from a 2012 study from the University of Cambridge that found that people who are bilingual are more likely to be able to find solutions in conflict. So it may be possible that being bilingual actually makes us a little bit nicer. And that's in short supply these days. So your brain obviously wants to be bilingual, and I hope you do too. So I've been at this for about 20 years, learning and speaking and teaching world languages. And while it's widely accepted that it's natural for a child to learn a second language easily and manage the two, a lot of adults fear that if they don't pick up a language when they're young, that ship has sailed. And I myself am proof of the opposite in my own life. And experience has taught me that there's 3 things that are really key to getting the most out of your language learning experience. One is to recognize teachers, master teachers in your environment. One is to communicate with purpose. And another is to have the tolerance for ambiguity. He's in the first row, second from the right. And the guy in the scarf behind him, does he look familiar? That's me at 20, Wisconsin. And I studied Hindi with Virendra. And his passion and his joy in the language, in teaching the language, in teaching through the culture was contagious. And even though I never achieved a very high level, to point out here in this picture is that we're all adults. We're not learning this second language as children. So it's possible. And when we're faced with experience where we don't know the language, it can be really intimidating. But the single best way to learn any language is by immersion. So here I am in Morocco, and while I may not be able to communicate very much in Arabic, I was walking through the mountains, and there was this farmer, and he offered me some figs. And if I'm unable to say shukran, if I'm unable to connect with him in his language, even for such a simple thing as thank you, then I'm really missing out on something really important. I'm missing an important opportunity. And what's the next word that I'm going to learn is figs. And who's the teacher who's going to teach me that? It's him. So I say shukran, and then he tells me figs. And that's how it all starts. And when we travel, we need to use language to find the bathroom, to get something to eat, to find a place to sleep. And that becomes the basis for our language skill. That becomes the foundation upon which we build our fluency in a language. And life is ambiguous when you're living in and traveling in a new culture and in a new language. Here I am about 10 years ago when I was studying my master's degree in Spain, and I'm in the mountains around Salamanca, and there's a pig walking in the street. So for me to be able to connect, this is an opportunity for a conversation, right? Like, what's this pig doing here? Do pigs just walk in the street in Spain? Is this normal? Well, not in Madrid, but in this small town, yeah. And so to be able to go into an environment and have the humility to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how this works. How does this work? Tell me about it. That is a real opportunity for language learning. And a really important thing to be able to do is to view anyone who speaks the language as a potential teacher. So just a couple of months ago, I was traveling with a group of students in Spain, and we went into this incredible bakery. And so I walked in there, and I started to have a conversation with a baker there, and I said, wow, this rye bread is incredible. Can you tell me more about this? So we're having a conversation there, and if you notice our body language, you'll see that we're sort of standing the same, right? And when you do that, naturally, when we're in conversation with other people, and there's sympathy between the two people, we actually connect physically. And you may notice that when you're with your friends, your speech changes in some ways to mirror what's happening. When you're in a job interview, your register is going to be a little bit different. And actually, this happens on a neurological level too. So in fact, our neurons are actually firing in the same areas of the brain when one person is speaking to another. It's absolutely incredible. It's magical. It is really incredible. But communication isn't always that smooth, right? I feel quite comfortable in Spanish. I'm feeling great. Yeah, we're in Spain, and I'm a Spanish teacher. It's great, right? But on this same trip, just a couple of months ago, we decided we'd just go over the border into France, go to the beach. Great. So we get to the beach. Everything's great, perfect, beautiful. And I noticed something. None of us have towels, right? And of course, the students want to swim, whatever. So I go up to the boardwalk, and I look around, and I see, okay, is there a shop where I can buy some towels? So I go out in search of towels. No towels, no towel shop. So I see a man sitting there, and I think, oh, man, how do you say towel in French? So I decide, okay, well, you know what? I know je voudrais, right? I want, right? So I'm gonna start with that, and then I'm just gonna try to adapt my Spanish. So I say, je voudrais comprer un toalla, because comprar una toalla, of course, is Spanish, and I think, hey, it's gonna be close enough. And the guy looks at me like, I don't speak caveman, right? So I start to gesture, oh, je voudrais toalla. And he says, acheter une serviette? And I'm thinking, in Spanish, servilleta means napkin. So I'm like, oui, oui, grande serviette, right? Like a big napkin. And so he indicates where it is and stuff like that. I go over to the shop, and I walk in, and I say, je voudrais acheter une serviette. And of course, here's a towel. And I've learned from this master teacher, from the shopkeeper, from the man sitting there. And all of it happens because I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to not have all the answers. Now, not all of us can travel. Not all of us can just, we have jobs, we have families, we have limited resources. Sometimes we lack both the time and the money to be able to immerse ourselves for, let's go for 6 months and immerse ourselves in a new language. It's not possible for everyone. But we can seek immersion experiences right here at home. There are bilingual communities here throughout the United States where there are people that would love to speak with you. One of the things that you can do is have an intercambio. In Spanish, we call it an intercambio. When you say, okay, we're going to speak 15 minutes in English, we're going to speak 15 minutes in our native language, and we both learn. And it's a great way to connect with immigrant communities and welcome people. You are that person who's welcoming a new person, and you're learning from each other. It's a great way to do it. Another great thing is that you can participate in a community. This is Café Conversación. This is a group of adults here in the Chattanooga area. We get together every month, and we just speak Spanish. And some people here have English as their first language, or Spanish as their first language, or Portuguese, or Tagalog, or German. But the focus is on communication and on community. And if you're unable to travel to find a local community or to find a class, you can still connect to the internet. And in the same way that TED Talks allow people who can't be in the room to connect to ideas, we can also get exposed to language through using technology. Well, it's all up to you. You need to be the one to take the first step. You need to plan your trip. You need to find some bilingual friends. You need to join a class. And I believe that in the simple act of using a language, we can improve our own lives and the world at the same time by building empathy and connections between people of vastly different backgrounds. I wish you well on your journey. The world is filled with 7.5 billion master teachers. Go discover a few for yourself. Gracias.